Chapter 1. The Wall. He heard her cry every night for 30 days. On the 31st night, the crying went silent. That was the night he moved. The building at 714 Morrow Street had been erected in 1920, a walk-up of brick and bad plumbing in a city of rust and rain. Before that, there had been a boarding house. Before that, a row of workers' cottages. And before all of it, in 1709, there had been a farmhouse with a stone hearth and a family named Cassian. The family was gone. The farmhouse was gone, but Cassian came back. Every few years he took the third-floor apartment, stayed a month, sat in the dark, and listened to the sounds of a building standing on the bones of his first life. His court called it the King's Visit. Evangeline called it moping with architectural justification. Either way, they left him alone. This year, the visit was different, because this year, apartment 3B had a new tenant. She'd moved in on a Tuesday. 1 box, 1 backpack, 1 deadbolt. That night, the crying started. 30 nights, a raw, choked sound that came through the wall like a blade. He learned her grief the way he'd once learned the temperaments of his court, involuntarily and completely. By the 7th night, it had become part of his landscape, the city outside, his book, the silence of his long life, and the sound of her breaking. On the 31st night, nothing. Not peace. Absence. He waited 2 hours. He couldn't hear her heartbeat. He couldn't hear her breathing. He broke through the wall. The dust was still settling when she screamed. What is... You were quiet, Cassian said, stepping over the rubble. She was on a mattress on the floor, clutching a threadbare quilt, eyes enormous. Hazel, flecked with green and gold, wide with terror. Who are you? I am your neighbor. She stared at the hole, then at him. You broke my wall. Yes. You broke my wall. You stopped crying. People stop crying. That's not a reason to demolish someone's apartment. You also stopped breathing. I was asleep. You were not asleep. Your heart rate was wrong. She pulled the quilt tighter. How do you know my heart rate? He realized, belatedly, that this was not a question with a convenient answer. The walls are thin, he said. Not this thin. This thin is new. You just punched through brick. I pushed. The structural integrity was already compromised. Oh, was it? Was the structural integrity compromised? By what? Your fist? I will have it repaired, he said, and I will pay for you to stay somewhere safe until it is. You're offering me a hotel, after breaking into my apartment. Yes. Through the wall. Through the wall, yes. She stared at him for a long, brittle moment. Then something shifted. The terror cracked, and underneath it was something harder, something that had a spine. Turn around, she said. I'm sorry? Turn around. I need to get dressed, and you've removed my privacy along with my wall. He turned, faced the rubble. Behind him, he heard cloth, a zipper, bare feet on gritty floorboards. He didn't turn. He gave her the dignity he'd just destroyed. Okay, she said from the doorway. He looked. She was small, wearing jeans and a sweatshirt, clutching a backpack like a lifeline. She looked like someone who'd been running on fumes for a very long time. Hotel, she said. Now. The lobby smelled of carpet cleaner and artificial flowers. Cassian placed his card on the counter with the authority of a man who had never once been told no. A room for the lady, a suite for myself. The night auditor straightened. Of course, sir. Ella, she said. Both men looked at her. For the room, Ella Vance. He nodded, did not offer his own name. In the elevator, she watched the mirrored wall. Her reflection, dusty, small, pale. His reflection, absent. She looked at the mirror, looked at him, looked at the mirror. He watched her figure it out. He could see the precise moment the impossibility registered. "This is you," he said when the elevator stopped at her floor. She stepped out. He held the door. "I'll have the wall repaired tomorrow. You're safe here. No one will bother you." "Why?" she asked. "Why any of this?" "Your grief had clarity," he said. "When it stopped, I was concerned. That's not a normal reaction." "No," he agreed. "It is not." The doors closed. Chapter 2. The Granola Bar. She locked the door, bolted it, wedged the desk chair under the handle, and allowed herself approximately 90 seconds of shaking before her brain overrode her body and demanded answers. No reflection. She had not imagined it. The mirror showed the elevator, the handrail, the scuffed floor, the overhead light, and a conspicuous absence where a tall man should have been. She slept for 12 hours, woke to a knock. A hotel employee with a flat box from a department store her mother would approve of. Inside, clothes in her size, a phone, a charger, a notebook, a pen, and a note in handwriting that belonged in a museum. "I thought you might need these. My number is the only contact. I will not call unless you call first. K." She stared at the phone for 40 minutes. Then she texted, "You know my size." 11 seconds later, the clothes were selected by a personal shopper based on approximate observation, not measurement. If anything is incorrect, it can be exchanged. Also, the fire exits on your floor are at both ends of the corridor. I have verified neither is obstructed. The nearest hospital is 7 minutes by car. Please eat something substantial. A granola bar is not a meal. She read it twice, laughed, a real, startled sound. First one in a month. "How do you know about the granola bar?" "It was in your backpack. I could hear the wrapper." "From the next apartment. The walls were thin. We have discussed this." "What are you, Kay?" A long pause. Then, "That is a conversation I would prefer to have in person. For now, please eat something that is not a granola bar." She ordered room service. Eggs, toast, coffee. Ate everything. "I ate real food, for the record." "What kind?" "Eggs, toast. This is acceptable." "How were the eggs prepared?" "Scrambled." "Were they adequately seasoned?" "K, they were hotel eggs." Hotel eggs is a category, not a nutritional assessment. I will speak with the kitchen. Do not speak with the kitchen. I have already spoken with the kitchen. What did you say to the kitchen? I expressed concern about seasoning. The chef was receptive. She put the phone down, picked it up, put it down again. She was being cared for by a man with no reflection who had opinions about eggs. Against every instinct she was charmed. The suite's thermostat was attempting to manage Kazian's life. It was a glowing tablet that periodically suggested a sleeping schedule, which was presumptuous given that he did not sleep. "I do not require your input," he told it. Energy-saving mode activated. "I did not authorize." He pressed the screen. Music began playing. The curtains started opening. Automatic, motorized, pulling back toward the morning light. He moved faster than the curtains, hit the override. The strip of sun that touched his hand reddened the skin for a second before it healed. He stared at the thermostat. "We are not compatible," he said. He called Evangeline. "My king. How is the court?" "Annoyed at your absence, as usual. Marchetti is posturing. Crane is sulking. The usual. How is the pilgrimage?" "Complicated." "Define complicated." "I broke through a wall." Silence. "Kazian, the walls of the building or brick and plaster. Into the neighboring apartment. There was a woman." "Say that again, slowly." "She was crying every night. For 30 days. Then she stopped. I could not hear her heartbeat." "So you demolished her wall." "I pushed through it. It was not a demolition. It was a targeted intervention." "You're the king of an immortal court, and you just used the phrase targeted intervention to describe breaking into a woman's apartment?" "I need a report. Ella Vance. Everything about her. Kazian, you are visiting the site of your childhood home for the annual exercise in sentiment and melancholy. This is supposed to be the quiet month. It has become less quiet. I can hear that. A pause. Report by dusk. And Kazian, you are the king. You are currently sitting in a hotel suite because you broke a wall for a mortal. I need you to hear how that sounds. It sounds impulsive. It sounds like something I'm going to have to explain to the court. Then don't tell the court. I haven't told the court you collect vintage armchairs either, but eventually these things come out. The report arrived at dusk. Ella Vance is a fiction, Evangeline said. The name is 3 months old. Before that, she was Ella Harris. Harris. He knew the name. Old money, long reach. Daughter of Jonathan Harris, the merger marriage family. She was betrothed to the eldest Whitfield's son. She refused. The family applied pressure, financial, social, professional. She ran. What kind of pressure? The efficient kind, frozen accounts. Her friends were reminded where their loyalties lay. Her professors were told her scholarship depended on family cooperation. They didn't yell, Kazian. They reasoned. I've read the communications. They're clinical. Affectionate even. The cruelty is in the pleasantness. He closed his eyes. He had seen dynasties operate like this for centuries. The calm, loving destruction of a person's choices. She's a luthier, Evangeline continued. She restores old instruments, cellos, violas, things with wood and 3 centuries of damage. She was working on a 17th century viola da gamba at the City Conservatory before she disappeared. Her professors used the word prodigy. Her family used the word hobby. The box of fine tools in her apartment. The books on stringed instruments by the mattress. Not a hobby, a vocation. A life someone had told her didn't count. Their investigators are still looking, Evangeline said. Quietly, persistently. I've misdirected them west, but Kazian, these are people with resources. They will find her eventually. Then we will ensure they find someone who is no longer afraid of them. A pause. That's an interesting pronoun, we. It is accurate. 3 days ago, you were sitting alone in the dark pretending a crumbling apartment was a substitute for therapy. Now it's we. The situation has evolved. I can see that. Another pause. Be careful with this one. She's not a project. She's not a court problem you can manage. I am aware. Are you? Because your track record with things you care about is, and I say this with 200 years of loyalty, not encouraging. He hung up. She was not wrong. Kay, your handwriting looks like it was taught by someone in the 1700s. He stared at the message. His thumbs hovered. 1734. So you're old. Yes. How old? Old enough that this building sits on the site of the house where I was born. 3 dots. Disappeared. Appeared. You're from here? The farmhouse was demolished in 1847. I come back sometimes. To a crumbling apartment where your house used to be. Yes. That is the saddest thing I have ever heard. It is not sad, it is maintenance. Maintenance. Of memory. Some things require returning to. She didn't reply for a long time. Then, yeah, I know what you mean. Chapter 3. The Cello. She called him the next morning. You don't have a reflection, she said. No preamble. No. And you can hear my heartbeat through walls. Yes. And you don't eat, you don't sleep, your skin is cold, your handwriting is from the 1730s. You can push through brick, and you were born in 1709. Correct. So you're a vampire. Yes. And you're, what? Living in a walk-up above the foundation of your childhood home for sentimental reasons? Yes. while also being, apparently, a king. Pause. How did you know that? The hotel staff call you sir, like they mean your majesty. The night auditor nearly genuflected. Your seneschal calls you my king, and you don't correct her. And you give instructions the way someone gives them who has never once been told no. I have been told no. When? I believe it was 1847. She laughed. He heard it through the phone, warm, surprised, alive. And something in his chest that had been still for a very long time shifted. Okay, she said. Questions. I expected questions. Do you eat? No. I can put food in my mouth. It serves no purpose beyond performance. Do you sleep? Not for approximately 200 years. What do you do all night? I sit, I read. I listen to the building. Sometimes I rearrange the bookshelf. For 200 years. The bookshelf benefits from regular reorganization. What do you consume? His jaw tightened. She couldn't see it, but she heard the pause, the careful spacing of his next words. Blood. I keep a supply. It is managed discreetly. From where? Medical sources, ethically acquired. I have not fed from a living person in a long time. How long is a long time for someone who is 317? Approximately 90 years. She was quiet for a moment. Can you go out during the day? No, sunlight is lethal. Lethal as in uncomfortable, or lethal as in fatal. Within minutes. The hotel's automated curtains nearly demonstrated this yesterday. The curtains tried to kill you? They opened without authorization. The thermostat and the curtain system appear to be in communication. I find this alarming. K. The smart home features are on the same app. I am aware. I have deleted the app. The app reinstalled itself. This is a hostile technology. She was laughing again. He could hear it, the specific vibration of someone trying not to laugh and failing. Can you come into someone's house without being invited? She asked. No. That rule is structural. It's not a choice. The threshold rejects me. I didn't invite you in. When you broke through the wall. You did not. The wall was not a threshold. It was a structural interior wall between two apartments in the same building, which I had already entered through the front door. The rule applies to private dwellings, not interior partitions. You found a loophole in vampire law. I found a structural technicality. Same thing. It is not the same thing. Loopholes imply intent to circumvent. I was acting on concern. You were acting on concern. Through a brick wall. The distinction is important to me. I'm sure it is. She paused. One more question. Yes. Are there others, like you, in this city? My court is elsewhere. I come here alone. But they exist. Your court. Other vampires. Yes, they exist. They are complicated. And they are not, at present, a concern. At present. At present. I want to see my apartment, she said. And I want to see yours. The wall was half repaired. Sergei's crew had rebuilt the brick, plaster was drying. Through the gap, she could see into his apartment, the armchair, the bookshelf, and leaning against the wall by the window, a case. What's in the case? She asked. A cello. How old? Older than I am. She was through the gap before he could respond, kneeling by the case with the sureness of someone who had stopped being afraid of this space. She opened it. The cello was beautiful and ruined. Scroll intact, ribs cracked, varnish worn to bare wood, bridge collapsed. But the proportions were right. 17th century, she said, her fingers tracing the grain. Italian, oil-based varnish, Cremonese or Brescian. She looked up. Where did you get this? Venice, 1742. It's been badly stored. The humidity damage is extensive. The top plate has separated along the treble side. Her face was luminous with focus, the same authority he brought to matters of state. But the wood is alive. I can feel it. Can it be restored? If someone knew what they were doing. Someone like you. Someone exactly like me. She laid it on his desk and opened her tools. Can I work here? Your light is better. For an hour, he watched her become someone else. The broken woman from the mattress was gone. In her place, precision, authority, competence. The varnish is original, she said, working. See these dark patches? That's where someone's hand rested. 300 years of grip baked into the surface. That was my hand, he said. She stopped, looked at the worn varnish, looked at his hands, put her fingertips on the impression of a grip that had been there for centuries. You played this. In another life. Why did you stop? After a certain number of years, everything becomes repetition. The same notes, the same resonances. Eventually, playing became indistinguishable from remembering, and I was not interested in remembering. That's the saddest thing anyone has ever said about a cello, and you've already set a high bar for sad tonight. I am aware. She picked up a small gouge and began working on the plate separation. The thing about restoration, you're not trying to make something new. You're trying to make something itself again. You work with the damage, the cracks, the wear, the neglect. Those become part of what it is. You don't erase them, you stabilize them. She looked up. He was watching her with something raw under the composure. I'm talking about the cello, she said. I know. Just the cello. Of course. The gouge slipped. The blade caught her thumb, a small cut, bright red. Kazian went still. Not the composed stillness, a different kind. Something very old and very dangerous, awake in the room. His eyes changed, dark brown ringed with amber. His hands gripped the desk edge. The wood creaked. Kay, she said. Give me a moment. Each word placed like a stepping stone across something deep. She watched, she waited. She didn't flinch. After 10 seconds, the amber receded. His grip loosened. The desk was dented. Sorry, he said. Don't be, she held up her thumb. I should be more careful. You should be more careful with me. Probably. She went back to the cello. But I'm not going to be. He stared at her. She didn't look up. Her pulse, which he could hear, was elevated but not afraid. Not afraid. You are the most confounding person I have met in 300 years, he said. I get that a lot. Chapter 4. The Silence. They fell into a rhythm. Every evening she came through the gap in the wall, now fitted with a cheap hollow core door from the hardware store, and worked on the cello at his desk. He sat in the armchair and pretended to read. You're not reading, she said on the third evening. I am reading. You haven't turned a page in 40 minutes. It is a very dense paragraph. It's upside down, Kay. He looked at the book. It was, in fact, upside down. He turned it over with great dignity. The building's heating system, he said, changing the subject, has not been serviced in 14 months. I have contacted the city. Have you? They were unhelpful. I contacted them again. They suggested I speak with the landlord. I spoke with the landlord. He suggested I speak with the city. Kay. I am considering purchasing the building. You are not purchasing the building. The fire exits are substandard. The electrical wiring is original. Your apartment does not have a functioning smoke detector. I don't live in my apartment anymore. I live in yours. The words landed between them. She looked up from the cello. He looked up from the upside-down book. The cheap door between their apartments stood open, and neither of them commented on what she'd just said. The varnish is drying well, she said, going back to work. Good, he said, going back to not reading. On the 5th evening, she discovered he had ordered a humidifier. Kay, what is this? A humidifier, for the cello. I know what a humidifier is. Why is it the size of a small horse? The apartment's ambient humidity is 34%. You said the cello requires consistent humidity. I researched optimal conditions. The consensus was 45 to 55%. So you bought an industrial humidifier. It was the highest rated model. It's for a warehouse. This apartment is 400 square feet. I wanted to ensure adequate coverage. She stared at him. He stared back with the perfect composure of a man who had never once been wrong about a purchase. Return it, she said. I'll get a small one. This one has an app. Kay, you hate apps. The thermostat app tried to kill you. This app is different. It monitors humidity levels in real time. I have been checking it every 40 minutes. Every 40, she put down her tools. You've been monitoring the humidity of this apartment every 40 minutes? The cello is important to you. Therefore, the humidity is important to me. Therefore, the app is tolerable. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Then she did something he had never seen before. She crossed the room, took his face in both hands, her warm palms against his cold jaw, and kissed him on the forehead. You're insane, she said. I am thorough. Return the horse humidifier. I'll get a normal one. As you wish. On the 7th evening, he raised the subject of nutrition again. You had a granola bar for lunch. I had a sandwich and a granola bar. The sandwich was insufficient. It contained 3 ingredients. How many ingredients should a sandwich contain? I am not a nutritionist, but I have consulted one. You consulted a nutritionist about my sandwich. She was very helpful. She suggested a minimum of 5 food groups per meal. Kay, did you call a nutritionist and describe my eating habits? I described a hypothetical 26-year-old woman who subsists primarily on granola bars and hotel eggs. The nutritionist was concerned. I'm concerned. About you. About this behavior. I have also researched the caloric requirements of someone performing fine manual labor. You are under-fueled. I'm going to start eating in my own apartment just so you can't hear me chewing. I would hear you through the door. I'll close the door. I would still hear you. The door is hollow core. It has no acoustic value whatsoever. She threw a wood shaving at him. It landed on his shoulder. He looked at it with the mild surprise of someone who had not had something thrown at him in quite some time. Did you just throw a wood shaving at the king of an immortal court? He said. I did. I see. He picked it off his shoulder, examined it, and placed it carefully on the side table. I will note this for the record. Note away. It was, he realized on the 9th evening, the closest thing to happiness he had felt in decades. This, the sound of her working, the smell of old wood and fresh varnish, the steady percussion of her heartbeat, a rhythm he had never known he needed. Evangeline called at 11. Her voice was different. Not dry, not amused. Tight. Marchetti has made his move, she said. He's declared the Eastern Quarter autonomous. Crane is mobilizing. I have 60 armed on one side, 40 on the other, and a council chamber that smells like it's about to become a battlefield. Kazian's stillness changed. Ella, working on the cello's bridge, noticed. The air in the room shifted, like a barometric drop before a storm. How long, he said. Hours, maybe less. They need the king, Kazian. Not a delegate, not a message. You. In the chamber. Before midnight, or I cannot guarantee anyone survives this, including me. He closed his eyes. 300 years of this. The same feuds. The same factions. The same desperate, bloody mathematics of power. "I'm coming," he said. He hung up. Ella was watching him. Something had changed in the room. The man who'd been not reading his upside-down book was gone. The thing that stood up from the armchair moved differently, faster, harder. "What's wrong?" she said. "I have to go." "Now? It's 11 at night." "Now." He was at the desk drawer, taking out the signet ring. He put it on. The transformation was visible. The man who worried about fire exits and granola bars was gone. In his place was something older, harder, colder. "Kay, talk to me. What happened?" "A situation at court." "What kind of situation?" "The kind that requires my physical presence." "That's not an answer." "It is the answer I can give you right now." He pulled on his coat. Different coat. The one from the back of the closet, darker, finer. Court clothes. He was already a different person. "How long will you be gone?" she asked. He didn't answer. He was checking his phone, sending a message to someone, Evangeline, or someone else from his world. His face was the face from the first night. Unreadable, ancient, the stillness of a mountain. "Kay," she stood up from the cello. "How long?" "I don't know." He was at the door. He stopped. Looked at her, one last look, the kind that held too much weight for the doorway of a crumbling apartment. "I'm sorry, Ella, I have to." "Go," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands had tightened on the gouge. "It's fine, go." He left. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, not the careful, measured steps she'd learned. Fast. A king's stride. Then the building's front door. Then nothing. Silence. She sat at the desk with the half-restored cello and waited. For a text. A call. A note in his museum handwriting. Anything. An hour passed. Nothing. "Is everything okay?" No reply. "Kay?" Nothing. 2 hours. The building settled into its groans. The cheap door between apartments stood open. His armchair sat empty. His book, still upside down, waited on the side table. The signet ring's imprint was pressed into the desk drawer's velvet lining. She waited. He did not come back. Day 2. No message, no call. His apartment untouched. Day 3. She checked the phone every hour. The single contact, Kay, stared back at her in silence. Day 5. She stopped checking. Day 8. The wall was fully repaired. Sergei's crew came and went. She let them in, signed the paperwork, watched them plaster over the last evidence of the hole. The cheap door between apartments remained. She stood in her own apartment, which she hadn't slept in for a week, and looked at the closed door. On the other side, his armchair, his books, the cello on the desk. On this side, her mattress, her empty box of tools, her silence. He had left. Without a word. Without a message. Without the goodbye she had specifically, desperately needed from the one person she'd trusted not to disappear. She was, she realized, completely unsurprised. This was what people did. Her family had done it with money and lawyers. He had done it with silence and a door. The method was different. The result was the same. She could break. She had done it before. She knew the shape of it. The slow collapse, the 30 nights of crying, the erosion of herself into a blank space where a person used to be. Or she could do something else. She opened the door, walked into his apartment, sat at his desk, picked up the cello, and went back to work. Chapter 5. The Restoration. She worked on the cello every night for 2 weeks. It was, she told herself, not about him. It was about the instrument. A 17th century masterwork didn't deserve to sit unfinished because the man who owned it had vanished, like every other person she'd ever trusted. The cello hadn't left. The cello was here. The cello needed her. She stabilized the top plate, re-glued the ribs, carved a new bridge from maple she'd ordered with his credit card, which still worked, which she took as either a sign he was alive or a sign his bank hadn't noticed. She mixed varnish to match the original oil base, working by the fluorescent kitchen light, testing each batch against the worn surface until the color sang. She ate real meals. She ordered them on the phone he'd given her, from the hotel kitchen whose chef she'd befriended after Kazian's seasoning intervention. She slept in his armchair, wrapped in the hotel blanket she'd stolen, surrounded by the smell of old wood and fresh varnish and the absence of him. She didn't cry, not once. On day 4, she talked to the cello. "You and I have a lot in common," she said, fitting a clamp to the treble rib. "We've both been put in boxes by people who didn't know what to do with us. We've both been neglected. And we're both, apparently, the kind of thing that requires a vampire king to come along and break something before anyone pays attention." She tightened the clamp. "But here's the difference between you and me. You can't fix yourself. I can." On day 7, Sergei came to finish the wall. He was polite, efficient, and clearly terrified of the apartment's absent owner. Will he be back soon?" Sergei asked, mixing plaster. "I don't know. He's a good man, particular, very particular, but good. How long have you worked for him?" Sergei paused. Something careful moved behind his eyes. "A long time. My father worked for him before me." "Your father. And my grandfather." She did the math. 3 generations, which meant Sergei knew, at least partially, what Kazian was. He wasn't asking when the king would be back out of professional concern. He was asking because he was worried. "He had to go somewhere," she said. "Something urgent." Sergei nodded slowly. "When he comes back, tell him the wall is solid. Load-bearing this time." He paused at the door. "And tell him, Sergei says the building's fire exits have been cleared. He'll know what it means." She almost laughed. Even his contractor had been recruited into the fire exit campaign. On day 10, her father's investigator found her. He was waiting outside the building, a polite man in a gray suit, holding a business card she didn't take. "Ms. Harris," he said, "your father would like to speak with you." "I'm sure he would." "He's prepared to offer you a full restoration of your trust fund, your conservatory position, and an apartment of your choosing. The engagement has been called off. He simply wants you to come home." Ella looked at the man, then at the building behind her, crumbling, grim, the place where she'd cried for 30 days and then been woken by a vampire breaking through her wall. "Tell my father," she said, "that I'm restoring a cello. He won't know what that means. Tell him anyway." "Ms. Harris." "Tell him I have my own position now. The conservatory wants me back, on my terms. I start next month. Your father would prefer, Mr. She glanced at the business card he was still holding. "Mr. Reeves, my father would prefer a lot of things. He'd prefer I married the Whitfield boy. He'd prefer I considered instrument restoration a charming hobby. He'd prefer I came home and stopped being inconvenient." She stepped closer. "I've been inconvenient my whole life. It turns out I'm very good at it." "And if he continues to look for you?" "Then he'll receive a very detailed package of financial records, communications, and one recording of him explaining, in his own calm voice, exactly how he intended to make my life unworkable. I've been carrying it since I left. Luthiers are detail-oriented." The investigator lowered his business card. "I'll convey your message, Miss Harris." "Vance," she said. "It's Ms. Vance now. And tell him that if he sends anyone else, I'll go to the press with the financial records I've been carrying since I left. He knows which ones." She smiled. It was not a warm smile. "That's not a negotiation, it's a statement." The investigator left. She went upstairs and worked on the cello for 6 more hours. On day 16, she strung it. New strings, gut core, the kind that would have been used in the 17th century. She tuned each one by ear, her fingers finding the pegs, turning them in micro increments until the sound was right. The cello's voice came back slowly, thin at first, then richer, then full. The resonance filled the small apartment, bouncing off the walls, vibrating in the floorboards. She played a single note, held it, let it ring. The cello sounded like 300 years of silence ending. She set down the bow and sat in his armchair and looked at the instrument she had brought back to life. And for the first time in 16 days, she allowed herself to think, "Where are you?" He came back on a Tuesday. She heard the front door of the building, a sound she'd stopped listening for. Then footsteps on the stairs. His footsteps, which she knew from a month of listening through walls. Slow, heavy. Not the measured stride of a king. The walk of a man who was very tired. The apartment door opened. He stood in the doorway, and he looked like 3 centuries had landed on him at once. His coat was different, darker, finer. The signet ring was on his hand. There was a thin line across his jaw that might have been a cut, almost healed. He saw the cello first. Strung, restored. Standing upright on its end pin by the desk, gleaming with fresh varnish in the kitchen light. Then he saw her, in his armchair, with a cup of tea and an expression that could have frozen the sun. "You're back," she said. "Yes. 16 days. I know. No message. No. No call, no text, no note in your museum handwriting. No." She set down the tea. Why? He stood in the doorway and he did not give her the managed voice, the composed face, the 3 centuries of courtly control. He gave her the truth. 2 factions in my court were hours from killing each other. My seneschal was in danger. I had to be there in person, or people would have died. I understand that. I know you do. Then why didn't you tell me? He was quiet for a long time. She watched the struggle on his face, the muscle at his jaw, the tension at his temples. The ghost memory tells of a body that had no circulation but still remembered how to hurt. I have never had someone to tell, he said. In 317 years, there has never been a person whose absence I needed to explain my own. I left because I had to. I didn't tell you because it didn't, he stopped. It didn't occur to me. It didn't occur to you. Kings don't say goodbye, they move. They act. They return when the crisis is resolved. No one waits, no one asks where they've been. I waited, she said. I waited every night. And you know what silence means to me. You broke through a wall because I went quiet. And then you did the same thing to me. The words landed. She watched them hit, watched 3 centuries of composure crack along a fault line that had her name on it. Yes, he said, I did. Was it worth it? Whatever happened at your court? 40 people are alive who would be dead if I hadn't gone. She nodded. Then you were right to go. I was wrong not to tell you. Yes, you were. Silence. Then she looked at the phone on the desk, the one he'd given her, the one with a single contact. I texted you twice, she said, the first night, and then I stopped. He looked at her. 16 days, Kay. I had the phone. I could have called every hour. I could have left a voicemail. I could have texted Evangeline. I know her name. I know she exists. I could have found a way. She swallowed. Instead, I sent 2 messages, and when you didn't answer, I decided that was the whole story. That you'd left. That silence meant abandonment. Because that's what it's always meant in my life. Ella, I did the same thing you did. You defaulted to not telling. I defaulted to not asking. You left without a word, and I stopped reaching for one. Her voice was steady, but her hands were not. You're not the only one who needs to learn something here. He stared at her. She stared back. Two people who had both gone silent when they should have spoken, standing on opposite sides of a room full of varnish and dust, and the sound of 300 years of damage being named out loud. "So here's what's going to happen," she said. "You're going to learn to tell me when you leave, and I'm going to learn to ask instead of assuming the worst and retreating into a cello." "That seems fair." "It's not fair, it's work. For both of us." "I am willing to do the work." "Good, because the cello is finished and I need a new project." Silence. The cello gleamed between them. "You finished it," he said. "It took 16 days. His voice caught. He crossed the room, slowly, and stood before the cello. He reached out and touched the varnish, the new surface she'd built over the old, the damage stabilized, the cracks preserved. His fingers found the dark patches where his grip had been 3 centuries ago. They were still there, under the new varnish. She hadn't erased them. "You kept the marks," he said. "I told you, you work with the damage. You don't erase it." He looked at her. She looked at him. The distance between them was 3 feet, and 16 days, and 3 centuries, and the cheap hollow core door that stood open between their apartments. "I am going to learn," he said, "how to tell someone where I'm going. It will be difficult. I have been a king for a very long time." "That's not an excuse." "It is not. It is a starting point." "A starting point?" "I would like it to be." She stood up from the armchair. She was still thin, still small, but she was no longer the woman on the mattress. She'd restored a 17th century cello, faced down her family's investigator, eaten real food for 16 days, and slept in a vampire's armchair without flinching. She didn't need him. She had proven that comprehensively. "I handled my family while you were gone," she said. "They found me. I dealt with it." "You," he blinked. "How?" "I told them to stop looking. I had documentation. They stopped." "You carried documentation?" "Since the night I left, in the backpack." He stared at her. "You have been carrying evidence of your family's coercion in a backpack for 2 months. Luthiers are detail-oriented." Something broke open on his face. Not a smile, not a laugh, but the startled devastation of a man who had just realized the woman in front of him was not someone who needed saving. She was someone who needed choosing. And he had not, until this moment, understood the difference. "Ella," he said. Kazian. "I know your name. I would like to stay." "You live here." "I would like to stay for you." She crossed the 3 feet, stood in front of him. The temperature difference between them was a physical fact, her warmth, his cold, the narrow space where they met. "Then stay," she said. "But the next time you have to leave, you tell me, you text me, you leave a note. I don't care if it's 3 words on the back of a receipt. You do not go silent. Not with me." "Not with you," he said. She kissed him. His lips were cold, hers were warm. The contrast was sharp and specific, like touching a key in winter, the surprise, then the heat that followed. It tasted like tea and varnish and the salt of tears she hadn't cried. When she pulled back, his eyes were amber. "Your eyes do that a lot," she said. "Only with you." "Is it a problem?" "Not the kind you're thinking of." She smiled, the full, slightly crooked smile that rearranged her whole face. "Play it," she said. "The cello. I didn't restore it so it could sit there." He looked at the cello, at her, at the cello. "It has been 80 years, he said. "Then it's time." He sat. He picked up the bow. He drew it across the strings, and the sound that filled the apartment was 300 years old and brand new, resonant, deep, alive. The wood she'd stabilized, the strings she'd strung, the varnish she'd matched, the cracks she'd preserved, all of it singing. She sat in the armchair and listened. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, the cello filled the room, and the cheap door between their apartments stood open, and neither of them was alone. Chapter 6. The Door. 3 months later, Evangeline called during the cello's evening session. "The court requires your presence on Thursday," she said. "I'll be there." "With or without the luthier?" "Her name is Ella." "With or without Ella?" He looked across the room. Ella was sitting in his armchair, her armchair now, really, with a cup of tea and a book about Brescian varnish techniques. She looked up when she felt his gaze. "Thursday?" she mouthed. He nodded. "Tell Evangeline I said hi," she said, and went back to her book. "She says hello," Cassian told the phone. "Charming. Thursday. Formal. The court will have opinions about a mortal in the chamber." "The court always has opinions." "These opinions may involve teeth." "Then they will learn to keep their opinions behind their teeth." Evangeline paused. "You sound different." "I have been playing the cello." "You haven't played in 80 years. "I have been informed that sitting in the dark with a book you're not reading does not constitute a personality." "By whom?" "By Ella." "I like her already." He hung up. Ella was watching him, with the expression she wore when she'd finished examining something and reached her conclusion. "You're going to introduce me to your vampire court," she said, "if you're willing." "Will they try to eat me?" "No." "Will they want to?" "Some of them." "And you'll stop them?" "I will stop them. But you should know, you are choosing to walk into a room full of predators. The danger is real. I will not pretend otherwise." She set down her book. "I walked into an apartment with a predator who'd just broken through my wall. We're past the danger conversation. This is different. There will be many of them. And there will be one of me. I'm used to those odds. Ask my father." "Your father's people did not have enhanced hearing, superior strength, and a biological imperative to feed on your blood." "No, they had lawyers. I'm not sure which is worse." He did not smile, but the muscle at the corner of his mouth twitched, the ghost of one. "I have concerns," he said. "You always have concerns." "These concerns are specific. The court chamber is underground. The ventilation is poor. The staircases are stone and uneven. I will need to review the emergency exits. K. There are 300 vampires in active court membership. I know the temperament of approximately 260 of them. The other 40 are variables. K. Marchetti's faction is still resentful. Crane's people are watching. There will be at least 4 separate individuals who will test you within the first hour. They will be polite. The politeness is the weapon. Cassian, she put down her tea. I grew up in the Harris family. Polite weapons are my native language. He looked at her. She looked at him. The cheap door between their apartments stood open, and he realized, with the particular clarity of a man who had lived long enough to recognize the exact moment a thing became irreversible, that she was not afraid. She had never been fragile. She had been grieving, which was different. And now she was done grieving, and what remained was a woman who could restore antique cellos, dismantle dynasties with a folder of documentation, and look a 300-year-old predator in the eye while drinking tea. Thursday, he said. I'll need a dress. I'll buy my own dress, Kay. Of course. With my own money, from my own account, which I reopened last week. You reopened? I'm a luthier. I have clients now. The conservatory wants me back, on my terms. I start next month. He stared at her. She smiled. You didn't know, she said. I did not. Good. Now you know what it feels like to find out someone made a major life decision without telling you. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. That, he said, was deliberate. 317 years old and he's finally learning. The wall at 714 Morrow Street was fully repaired. You would never know it had been destroyed. But the door stayed, the cheap, ugly, hollow-core hardware store door with no proper handle, set into the wall between their apartments. Cassian had offered to replace it, mahogany, oak, proper hinges. No, Ella had said. I like it ugly. It reminds me. Of what? Of the night someone broke through a wall because they couldn't stand the silence. The door stayed open. It was always open. On one side, his apartment, his armchair, his books he was now actually reading. On the other, her apartment, her tools, her client's instruments waiting for her attention. Between them, the cello, restored, standing in the corner, played every evening by a man who had stopped playing 80 years ago and started again because a woman had told him it was time. Some nights, she worked late. He could hear her, the scrape of a blade, the careful tap of a chisel, the sound of someone building something. He sat in his armchair and listened, and the silence between them was not empty. It was full. It was the silence of two people who had learned, separately and together, that some things, old things, broken things, things the world had given up on, were worth the patience of restoring.